Here's something the old English gardeners knew that most of us have completely let go of. You don't need to buy new plants every spring. One healthy plant and one simple cutting trick can give you a dozen more for free. While everyone else is handing money to the garden center, you could be filling every pot and border from what you already grow. I'm Helen Green, but around here, most folks just call me Grandma Dot. And I've been rooting my own cuttings this way for more years than I'll admit. If you'd like to grow more from less and fill your garden without spending a dime, take a moment and subscribe. That's exactly what I share here. So let me show you. Now, before we go a single step further, I want you to understand one thing, because it changes the way you look at every green and growing thing you keep. A plant does not think of itself the way you think of it. You look at your rosemary by the door, your lavender along the path, your old rose by the gate, and you see one plant, one thing, bought the once, planted the once, and left to get on with it. But the plant never saw one. The plant saw many. Every stem it puts out is a small promise, a whole life folded up and waiting, ready to become a plant of its own, the moment it finds a bit of earth and a reason to root. That is the secret at the heart of all of this. You are not making new plants out of nothing. You are only giving the plant the chance it was always reaching for. My grandmother taught me this, out in a garden smaller than most kitchens, with a windowsill full of jam jars and a knife she kept sharp as a whisper. She never bought a plant in her life that I can remember. She begged a cutting here, snipped a bit there, rooted it on the sill, and grew a garden the whole street came to look at. Her mother did the same before her, back when buying a plant in a plastic pot would have seemed a foolish thing, a thing for folk with more money than sense. That is where my knowing comes from. Not a book, not a badge, not a course with a certificate at the end of it. Just women handing the same small trick down the line, one to the next, until it came to me, and now, if you'll have it, to you. So let me tell you plainly what a cutting is, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. A cutting is nothing but a piece of a healthy plant, a length of stem, a few inches, no more, that you take off and coax into growing roots of its own. That is the whole of it. You are not planting a seed and hoping. You are taking a piece that already is the plant, already knows how to be that plant, and you are simply telling it, now, grow yourself a set of roots and stand on your own. And the wonderful thing, the thing that still delights me after all these years, is that the plant knows how. It has always known how. You are just asking. Here is the part you must hold on to, the one bit of knowing that makes all the rest of it work. Look close at any stem, and you'll see little bumps or joints spaced along it, where a leaf grows out or once grew. Those joints are called nodes. And the node is everything. That little swelling is where the plant keeps its roots in waiting, the cells that, given moisture and warmth and a bit of dark, will push out white roots of their own. Cut your stem in the wrong place, out in the smooth middle between the joints, and you may wait a good long while for nothing. Cut it just below a node, and you have given those sleeping roots exactly the doorway they need. Now, before I carry on, let me say just one honest thing, and then I'll leave it be. If you're finding this useful and you'd like the whole of it written down plain, every plant that takes to this trick, which season suits which, how long each one wants, and the little willow and honey recipes just as I use them, I've gathered it all into a small book, and it's waiting for you down in the description below, with a few other bits and pieces that I lean on myself. You can carry it out to the garden instead of squinting at a screen with muddy hands. I'll not go on about it, and I'll not mention it again. It's there if you want it, and that is all. So remember it. Say it to yourself out in the garden, just below the node. That is the difference between a jar of sad brown sticks and a jar full of white roots. Now, you don't need much to do this. That is rather the point of it. You need something sharp and clean to cut with a proper pair of secateurs if you have them, or a small knife, or even good scissors, so long as the blade is clean and keen. A blunt, dirty blade crushes and bruises the stem, and a bruised stem rots instead of rooting, so wipe your blade. You'll want a jar of water or a small pot of gritty, free-draining compost. I'll come to which suits which in a moment. And that is nearly all. No special kit, no heated bench, no bag of costly powder unless you fancy it. A jam jar on a windowsill has rooted more plants in this country than every fancy propagator ever sold. Cheap as dirt and twice as useful. Let me tell you about timing, because it matters more than folk think, and it's where a lot of good intentions come to grief. There are 3 seasons for cuttings, and each takes a different sort of stem. In late spring and early summer, you take what's called a softwood, cutting the fresh, green, bendy new growth from the tips, soft as the season itself. These root the quickest of all, often in just 2 or 3 weeks, because that young growth is fairly bursting to make roots. This is the easiest place to begin, so if you're new to it, start here. Later in summer, as those stems begin to firm and go woody at the base, but stay green at the tip, you take a semi-ripe, cutting a little slower, a little tougher, and very forgiving. And then, in autumn and on into winter, when the leaves have fallen and the stems have gone properly hard and woody, you take a hardwood cutting, and I'll tell you about those last to stand, because they may be the laziest, most magical trick of the whole lot. But let's do a softwood cutting together now, in your mind, step by step, because once you've done one, you've done 100. First, go out in the morning, when the plant is full of water and firm, never in the heat of the afternoon when it's wilting and tired. Choose a healthy shoot, no flowers on it if you can help it, because a stem trying to flower is spending its strength on the bloom, not on rooting, so pinch off any buds. Cut yourself a length about 4 to 6 inches long. Now, trim the bottom cleanly, just below a node, that little joint we spoke of. Strip away the leaves from the lower half of the stem gently, so you don't tear the skin, because any leaf left sitting in water or buried in the compost will only rot and spoil the whole thing. Leave 2 or 3 leaves at the top to keep the plant breathing and feeding itself. And if those top leaves are big, like a hydrangea's great flapping things, cut each one in half across to slow the water loss while the cutting has no roots to drink with. That's the whole preparation. Below the node, leaves off the bottom, a few leaves up top. Simple as that. Now here comes the old trick, the one my grandmother swore by, and her mother before her, and it costs you nothing but a walk to the nearest willow tree, willow water. You see, the willow is the great rooter of the plant world. It roots so readily that a fallen willow branch will sprout in a wet ditch all on its own, and it carries in its young stems the very substances that tell a plant to make roots. So you gather a good handful of the thin, whippy young willow twigs, the green ones from this year, cut them into little inch-long pieces, and steep them in a jar of water, same as you'd steep a pot of tea. Let it sit a day or 2, and that water turns into a natural rooting tonic. Stand your cuttings in it, or water your potted cuttings with it, and you've given them the old, free encouragement that gardeners used long before anyone thought to sell it in a tub. And if you've no willow to hand, a small smear of honey on the cut end does a kindly turn too. Honey is a natural guard against rot and mold, and it keeps the cut clean while the roots are thinking about coming. Willow to root it, honey to protect it, both of them already in the world, waiting, free for the taking. So now, do you root in water or in soil? Both work, and I'll tell you the truth of each. Water is the one everybody loves, because you get to watch. You stand your prepared cutting in a jar of water, willow water, if you have it on a bright sill, out of harsh direct sun. Top the water up as it drops, and change it every few days so it stays sweet and clear. And in a week or 2 or 3, depending on the plant, you'll see the little white roots come feeling out into the water. And I'll tell you honestly, that never stops being a small marvel, no matter how old you get. The one caution with water rooting is this. Roots grown in water are soft, water roots, and they can sulk a bit when you finally move them to soil. So don't leave them too long once the roots are an inch or two. Pot them up gently into compost and keep them well watered while they make the change. Rooting straight in soil skips that fuss. You fill a small pot with gritty, free-draining compost. I like a bit of sharp sand or perlite mixed through, so it holds moisture but never turns to sog, because sog is the great killer of cuttings. And you make a hole with a pencil or a stick, and you slide your cutting in so the lower node or two is buried. Firm it gently, water it in, and there it stays. You don't get to watch the roots, and you must resist the terrible urge to tug at it to see how it's getting on. Leave it be. Trust it, but the roots it makes are proper soil roots from the start, tougher and readier, and it settles in with far less sulking. For the woody sorts, your lavender, your rosemary, your rose, I'd steer you to soil. For the soft and juicy sorts, water is a joy. Now, whichever way you go, there is one more thing your cutting cannot do without, and it's the thing most folk forget. A cutting has no roots yet, which means it cannot drink, and yet every leaf on it is quietly losing water to the air all day long. So your whole job in those first weeks is to keep it from drying out and giving up before its roots arrive. And the old way to do that is simply to keep the air close and damp around it. My grandmother used an old glass bell jar for her prize cuttings, a lovely thing, but you don't need one. A clear plastic bag held up off the leaves with a couple of little sticks popped over the pot does the very same work. The cut-off top of a plastic bottle set over the pot like a little dome is better still, and free. That trapped, humid air is a nursery. It keeps the cutting from wilting while it has no way to drink. And I promise you, it is the difference between success and a windowsill of disappointment more often than any powder or potion. Keep it out of scorching sun. Keep it warm. Keep the air about it moist. Warmth below, moisture around, light but not blazing. Get those three right, and the plant does the rest. Let me give you a word now about warmth, because it's the quiet helper in all of this, and the one most folk never think to give. Roots don't come from the cold. They come from a gentle warmth down at the base of the stem, and a cutting that's a touch too cool will sit and sulk for weeks, where a warm one would already be rooting. The old gardeners knew this without ever reading it in any book. They set their cuttings on a warm sill above the kitchen range, or on a shelf over the hearth, anywhere the bottom heat came up, soft and steady from below. You can do the very same. A sill above a radiator, the top of the fridge where the warmth rises, a bright inner windowsill out of the cold draft, any of them will do. It needn't be hot. Blood warm is plenty. Warm feet and a cool head, that's what a cutting likes best. And if you give it that, you'll cut your rooting time near in half. And here's a thing about choosing your stem in the first place, because the plant you take from matters just as much as the way you take it. Choose from a plant that's healthy and thriving, never from a poorly one. A sickly plant passes its troubles straight down into every cutting you take from it, and you'll only be growing a dozen sick children from one sick mother. So pick the vigorous, the green, the well-fed, and take from the sides and the fresh growth, the young shoots reaching out this year, not the old hardwood down low that's long done its growing. A young shoot is hungry to root. An old woody one has near forgotten how. Take the eager growth from a happy plant on a fresh morning, and you have stacked every odd in your favor before you've made a single cut. Now, patience, for I'll not lie to you. This is a slow art, and it wants a slow heart. You cannot hurry a root. You cannot lift the cutting to peer at it, or poke it, or fret it into growing faster. All your fretting does is set it back. You set it up right, you keep it warm and moist and out of the harsh sun, and then you leave it be and let time and the plant do the quiet work between them. A gentle tug after a few weeks, the softest tug. Mind will tell you when it's rooted. If it holds fast and resists you, roots have taken hold down below, and you may begin to open up its little cover and let it meet the wider air. Slow, patient, unhurried. That is the whole spirit of the thing, and it is a good deal of why I love it. And I'll tell you, There is a particular joy in it that a shop-bought plant can never give you. To lift a little pot and find it laced through with white roots you grew yourself from a snipping, to stand back and see a whole bed of lavender that all came off one tired old bush by the gate. That is a satisfaction no money can buy at any till, in any shop, on any day of the week. It is the oldest pleasure in gardening, plain and quiet and deep, and it is yours for the taking, any spring you please. Now, let me tell you which plants will give you the most for the least, because this is where a single quiet afternoon turns into a whole garden. Let's start with the ones that root so willingly it feels like cheating. Lavender takes semi-ripe cuttings in summer, and you can turn one old plant into a whole fragrant hedge, and a fine saving on the buying. Rosemary is just as generous, and so is sage, and thyme, and mint, and near every soft herb you can name. A windowsill of herb cuttings will save you a small fortune over the buying of them. Geraniums, or pelargoniums, as the proper folk call them, root almost too eagerly. A snapped-off bit will often take with hardly any coaxing at all. Fuchsias the same, and then the shrubs' hydrangeas root beautifully from softwood cuttings, and one good hydrangea can furnish a whole border in a couple of seasons. Roses will take, though they ask a little more patience. And the fruiting ones, your black currants and red currants and gooseberries, are among the very easiest of all, which is a lovely thing, because a row of currant bushes is a row of free fruit for years to come. Now let me give you that hardwood trick I promised, because it may be the laziest bit of gardening ever invented, and it costs you nothing but a moment in the cold months when there's little else to do. In late autumn and winter, when your currants and roses and many shrubs have dropped their leaves and gone dormant and hard, you cut a straight, pencil-thick length of that year's growth, about 8 or 9 inches, trim it cleanly just below a node at the bottom and just above a bud at the top, so you know which way up it goes, always the way it grew. Then you simply push it, 2/3 of its length, straight into a spare bit of ground in a quiet corner, or into a deep pot of gritty compost, and this is the whole of the trick. You walk away and forget it. No jar, no bag, no fussing. The cold, the wet, and the slow patience of winter do the work. By the following autumn, that plain brown stick that cost you nothing will have quietly grown itself a set of roots, and you'll lift a brand new plant free of charge. My grandmother lined a whole path with currant bushes that way, from prunings she'd otherwise have burned. A word or two of honest caution, because I'll not pretend every cutting takes. They won't. Even the old hands lose a few, a stem that rots, one that dries, one that simply hasn't the heart to root, and there's no shame in it and no cause to blame yourself. That is exactly why you take more than you need. Take 6 where you want 3, take a dozen where you want a handful, and keep everything clean. The blade, the jar, the pot for rot is the one true enemy, and it rides in on dirt and stale water. Clean tools, fresh water, gritty compost, and more cuttings than you think you need. Follow that, and the numbers fall your way every time. And when your cuttings have rooted and grown strong, when the pot fills with roots and the top puts on fresh new leaves of its own, then you pot each one on into its own larger home, feed it a little, harden it off gently to the outdoor air over a week or so, rather than shocking it all at once, and plant it out. From one plant, a dozen, from that dozen, 100, and every one of them free, and every one of them carrying a little of the plant you already loved. Now here is the part that sits heaviest with me, and I'll be straight with you about it. Not so very long ago, near every gardener in the land knew this. It wasn't a secret, and it wasn't clever. It was ordinary as saving your own seed, or keeping a compost heap, a thing you simply did because that was how a garden was made and kept. And then, somewhere along the way, the growing of plants got taken out of our hands and set behind a till. We got busy, we got tired, we got used to the ease of it, and it became the normal thing to drive to a great shed of a place and hand over good money for a plant we could have made ourselves from one we already owned. No one schemed it. It was just the drift of things, the slow forgetting of a thing too humble to seem worth the keeping, but it was worth the keeping. A garden built from cuttings is a richer thing than a garden bought. Every plant in it has a story, a where it came from, a friend, or a mother, or a hedgerow behind it. That is the thing I most want to hand you today. Not just the trick, but the knowing that your garden can grow from your own two hands, patient and free, the way it always used to. So there it is, the whole of the old cutting trick, laid out plain. Choose a healthy plant, take your stem in the morning, cut clean just below a node, strip the lower leaves, dip it in willow water, or seal it with a little honey, and set it to root in a jar of water or a pot of gritty soil, keeping it warm, keeping the air moist, keeping it out of the scorching sun, and in a few short weeks, you'll have roots where you had none, a new plant where you had a snipping, and a garden that grows itself for free. Softwood in spring, semi-ripe in summer, hardwood shoved in the cold ground come winter, and more of every plant you love than you'll rightly know what to do with. Now, I would dearly love to hear from you. Tell me down in the comments which plant you're going to try this on first. Is it the lavender, the rose, the currants, or something your own grandmother grew that you've been longing to make more of? And tell me where in the world you're gardening from, for I do read every one, and it warms me to know where these old ways are still being carried on. And I've another little talk ready for you next, on the humble things most folk throw away that your garden would thank you for the keeping of. So come along, and let's fill another border together, for free.